Alrighty, welcome in everyone to just another edition of Just Another College Football Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tommy Brzee. It is Monday, September 8th, and we got a great week to talk about. It is a week that a lot of people told you was going to be sleepy. There's only one big game. There were a lot of big games and a lot of big-time implications coming out of this weekend, so let's go ahead and jump in. We got big game reactions. We got some upsets to talk about right after, a lot of upsets to talk about, and some close calls. We'll get into winners and losers at the very end of the show, but plenty of stuff to get to, and let's go ahead and start with the big one of the day, the one that really stole the show. It was Oklahoma over Michigan 24-13. This was a game that was the main event going into the weekend. It was the one that everyone would tell you was the only big game going into the weekend. That didn't end up being the case, but this was absolutely one that I think Oklahoma needed a little bit more. I think coming into this football game, you had a lot of different ideas going in, and a lot of it was around Bryce Underwood, a lot of pressure around him. We'll get to him here in a second, but Oklahoma needed this one. If they wanted to find a way to get to the playoff, which is outright their goal, they're going to have to be able to win this game because the schedule they got in front of them is an absolute nightmare. They still have Texas, they still have Missouri, they still have Alabama, they still have a ton LSU, a ton of teams that at some point you're going to get beat. I think that's inevitable for just about every team in the SEC, every team maybe in the Power 4 this upcoming year. But you got Oklahoma, a team that I think can go 9-3 and get into this thing. They probably weren't going to be able to only lose 2 of the last 10 games. Now you got 3 of the last 10 games that you hypothetically can lose, but frankly, I don't know if they're going to. John Mateer looked incredible in this game, was very impressive. A couple of misses, and that's going to be expected. The way that he throws the football, it's going to fly on him a couple of times, and it did on the interception. It did on a couple of different plays. It is not going to be the end of the world. He is a gunslinger. He is going to make mistakes. He's also going to make a lot of really great plays. He made some incredible plays with his legs. We'll talk about the run game and how they might want to get a little bit more out of their running backs here in a second, but this kid is going to give you a chance to win just about every game, especially with that defense on the other side of the field. He is going to make enough plays for you to win just about every game on your schedule. That game against Texas in a couple of weeks is going to be massive. He's going to be under a microscope. He brings a little bit of that juice to that offense, kind of like a Baker Mayfield did a couple of years ago. Obviously, I'm not saying he's going to be Baker Mayfield, just saying he brings a certain confidence, a certain swagger to the position that they're going to need over there in Oklahoma this year, mainly because I think a couple of other parts of their offense are shaky, let's say. He accounted for 344 yards of Oklahoma's 408 total yards. Obviously, the passing yards are going to be his. He was the leading rusher on this team. Not necessarily a huge issue. He has the ability to do that. He is going to do that in every big game. You are not going to be able to stop this kid from running and making plays with his legs. That's what he does. But if you're going to be nitpicky, and you probably should be if you want to make a playoff and you're Oklahoma, you got to find a little bit more from the running backs. You got to find a little bit more from this offensive line. They played much better than they did in week 1, and I thought did a really good job. Thought Ben Arbuckle did a great job kind of helping them out with this game plan. But you have to find a way to get a little bit more out of your running backs. You have to find a way to take a little bit off John Mateer's shoulders in these bigger games, or it could cause a couple of problems. Now, he looks fine. He looks incredible. He looked incredible on Saturday. I expect him to keep making those plays. It's a nitpicky thing, and I totally understand that. But I do think it is something that could hurt Oklahoma down the stretch. He got away with a couple of throws on Saturday that you might not get away with going forward. All of this is, getting into the weeds, but if you're Oklahoma, you want to make a CFP, and that's probably what you need to do, is get in the weeds and fix those couple of things. So, incredible win by Oklahoma, one they absolutely needed and one that puts them in a great position. Moving forward, as of right now, I would have them in my playoff. If I was to predict it today, didn't have it going in, so can't do that now. But at the end of the day, incredible performance from Oklahoma, one they absolutely needed. On the other hand, Bryce Underwood is the talk here. There's no question about that. That was going to be the case one way or the other. Either it was going to be Bryce Underwood's the best thing that's happened to college football in forever, or it was going to be what it is right now, which is Bryce Underwood ready for this moment? Is he even a 5-star? Is he worth the money that they put in? Yes, he is totally fine. He's going to be totally fine. They obviously called the game to, I don't want to say protect him, but keep him out of harm's way in a lot of respects, and that makes sense. It is a freshman going on the road to Oklahoma against one of the best defensive minds in the entirety of football, not even college football, but all of football with Brent Venables. You have to be careful, and the worst thing you can do is throw this guy to the wolves. He makes tons of mistakes. They throw 3 picks, they lose by 30, and then you don't have a quarterback with confidence going forward. It was about keeping the confidence up for this kid, and I thought they did that. Now, he went 9 for 24, not remotely what you wanted out of this kid, but he is going to be okay. They got to get new wide receivers in that room in the offseason. That is going to be the biggest thing for this this Michigan football team. Excuse me. They got to get guys in the at the wide receiver positions. They got to approach it like Penn State approached this offseason. When they get to the upcoming offseason, obviously you got a lot of football to play before then. Bryce Underwood's going to play really good football sometimes. They're going to go on the road. He's not going to play as good of football. That is what a freshman is. The talent level is out of this world. He is going to be a player that will get you into national title conversations, I believe, as early as next year if you turn the right keys in the offseason. So Michigan's going to be fine. I didn't think they were going to be a world beater this year. I didn't think Bryce Underwood was going to hit the ground running, especially against this Oklahoma defense. It was never going to be all that pretty. I don't think Michigan wanted it to be all that pretty. I think they thought they were going to be able to run the ball and play a little bit better defense and put themselves in a position to win without Bryce Underwood having to go out there and be Superman. So everyone freaking out about Bryce Underwood, I wouldn't. I think he's going to be totally fine. I think he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country starting next year and moving forward the rest of his career. He is going to help you win football games, but came away really impressed with Oklahoma. I think there is a lot going into this season. I think Ben Arbuckle has done an incredible job in the short term with this offense, really schemed up some incredible things. That defense is going to be scary. There's no two ways about that. And they're going to have the ability to get to the CFP this year if they can just tweak a couple of things, get a little bit stronger on the offensive line, get a little bit more of a comprehensive run game with the running backs. They are going to be a really dangerous team, and frankly, they're going to be on their way to the CFP. A lot of hurdles to get over. You won one big game here, you probably got to get about 4 or 5 more if you're going to find your way into the CFP, but they have all the ability to do that. Iowa State wins a game over Iowa. That was kind of what you expected from this game. Now, I thought Iowa State was going to be able to create a little bit more of a margin, but it was about as ugly as the Cyhawk series has been over the last couple of years, but Iowa State wins back-to-back games for the first time since 2010, 2011, wins at home for the first time since 2011. A massive game for Iowa State, one that you were never going to win this one pretty. That's the reality of playing Iowa, is every single game is going to be a little bit gross unless you're an Ohio State or a Oregon that has all the ability to just run around them, make their defense totally obsolete. That wasn't the case for Iowa State coming into this game, and they played incredible football to keep themselves at least a leg up the entire way. The play of the day was Jeremiah Cooper's INT because it puts you in a position to go up 10 right before half. Iowa comes back down, scores a touchdown, and they're not leading. They're not putting you away. They're not putting themselves in a lead going into halftime. They're still down by 3, and Iowa State kind of kept it that way. An incredible drive at the end, 13 plays, 55 yards, a couple of massive throws from Rocco Becht where he had a little bit of an up and down day, sometimes a little bit quiet, but when it mattered, he makes the plays that this Iowa State team needs. It is going to be huge for them in the Big 12 as they move forward. On the Iowa side, the offense just makes me sad, and I really don't know what else to say. Mark Gronowski, he's a good quarterback. It is not a good system. That's the reality of the situation. They had 214 total yards, 3.4 yards per rush, 83 passing yards on the day. It was bad, and I don't think it's going to get all that much better. Reese Vanderzee is going to come back at some point. You will get a boost then. It's not going to be pretty until then, and frankly, it's probably not going to be pretty after that. It is not going to be a great offensive team. It hasn't been for quite some time, and I don't really know what you do to change it other than a change of regime. And you don't want to do that too early. Obviously, they still have a ton of season to play. Obviously, they are going to get better. They're going to play better football. But it is getting rough over there, and I think some fans are getting a little bit restless with how this thing is going. We will see how this develops. A lot of things to go for Iowa. For Iowa State, a very real team. Absolutely a team that can find their way to the Big 12 title once again, win that thing, get into the CFP this year. They go to Arkansas State this weekend. I don't know why they're going to Arkansas State. We'll talk about that in the next segment. Stop going on the road to G5 teams or even below teams. Just don't do that. Really bad idea. But then they get into Big 12 play. It's Arizona, it's at Cincinnati, it's at Colorado. You can win all 3 of those games. And then you're looking at a 7-0 team that is moving forward and has the ability to go undefeated. I believe they get Arizona State. I believe they get Utah. So they have tough games. It's not to say that they're absolutely going to go undefeated. Frankly, I would bet on them not going undefeated. You've put yourself in a position where you play these next 4 games, you go undefeated in those. You have as much slack as any other Big 12 team. And frankly, with the chaos that I think is going to happen in the Big 12, that could be plenty for Iowa State to find their way to win this thing. They have incredible special teams. They have a quarterback that's going to make plays when they need it, and they're going to have one of the most stingy defenses in the entirety of the Big 12. This is a very good football team that absolutely will have something to say about the CFP this year. Moving forward to an SEC matchup this last weekend, Ole Miss gets a win on the road at Kentucky 30-23. They were able to escape, and frankly, I was dumb to think that they were going to escape with anything better than a 7-point win, because that's what Kroger Field is. When you go up to Lexington, you are not going to play your best football. That's what happened with Ole Miss today. Austin Simmons made enough throws in this game, but it was very obviously his first road start. It was a young guy that made a number of mistakes against a defense that is going to take advantage of those mistakes. That being said, he had 2 interceptions. Kewan Lacey in the backfield is a huge player for this team. Went for 138 and carried the rock 28 times. That's what they're going to need. And I think when they were talking about this on the broadcast, that is where this team has gotten immensely better. The run game is totally different than it was a year ago. If they had this run game with last year's quarterback, last year's experience, that's a playoff team. There's no question about that. They're going to have to help out Austin Simmons the rest of the way. They get Arkansas this weekend. They get Tulane right after that, and then LSU. You got to go 2-1. You got to find a way to go 2-1. Only have one loss moving forward into the SEC, because you're probably going to take another one. And obviously, Austin Simmons is going to continue to improve. I still think the talent is out of this world. I still think he has all the ability to be an elite player in this offense. You're probably going to need to meet him halfway, at least over the next 3 weeks. Find a way to go 2-1. If you win the next 2, then it's all on the line against LSU. And if you go 3-0, then you are fully off to the races. You might have knocked LSU out of the CFP conversation. We'll talk about them a little bit later in the show, but this is absolutely a team that can do some special things. The defense, although not perfect, played really good in this one. I think there were a number of big-time plays. They didn't score, Kentucky didn't, without a turnover in the first half, so it wasn't like they were marching down the field. They were getting short fields, and they were taking advantage of that, as you would expect a Mark Stoops team to do. So I think you're in a position for Ole Miss where it's not going to be perfect. It is going to be growing pains with Austin Simmons. It's going to be growing pains with a lot of new players on defense. This is obviously not the best team you're going to play, especially offensively. You're going to have to tighten the screws, but you have all the pieces in place, and you have a run game that is going to help you just have a higher floor, not expect as much from Austin Simmons week in and week out. If you can find a way to win the next 2 games, walk into the LSU game undefeated, you're in a really good position, and you move forward with every chance to get to the CFP. Obviously, some concerns around Austin Simmons, and I can't promise that everything's going to be worked out, but you're in a good position moving forward. For Kentucky, you get a layup against Eastern Michigan this upcoming weekend, but then at South Carolina, at Georgia, Texas comes to town, Tennessee, at Auburn. It's not going to get easier. It's not going to get better. And I think it's going to be a very tough year for Mark Stoops. I think they're going to win a game or 2 here and there, because that's just kind of what Mark Stoops does. They find a way to win one of those games where you have Texas or Tennessee coming to town. Those are interesting games. There's no doubt about that. But it's not going to be all that pretty for Kentucky this season. I don't think anyone really expected it to be this season. This was an opening to win a big-time game, and they left it on the table. And I think that's more than fine, really, in the grand scheme of things. But they're going to have to find a way to get a couple this year, or it's probably going to be the end of the Mark Stoops era around there. For Ole Miss, a relative mystery to me. If Austin Simmons can get a ton better, if he can find a couple of grooves in games, they can win big games. They can get to the Georgia game with maybe only 1 loss, maybe undefeated coming off an LSU win. You're in great shape. You have Georgia at Oklahoma, South Carolina at home. You have every ability to make this thing very interesting. You're going to need more out of Austin Simmons. I don't think that can really be argued, but I tend to believe you're going to get more, and if that run game continues to produce the way it did on Saturday, you're going to have a lot of ability to, at the very least, be in games late. Missouri gets a big-time win over Kansas, a 42-31 win. This was a battle, and it was a really fun offensive battle in so many different ways. Bo Parabola goes for 334 through the air, makes all the plays with his arms. Did not need his legs in this game because both Jamal Roberts and Ahmad Hardy went for over 100 yards. That is a running back duo that is going to give them all the ability in the world. This was a Missouri offense that I don't want to say I was down on, but I was skeptical of. Coming into the season, I wasn't sure Bo Parabola was going to be able to throw the ball at the level they needed. I thought the offensive line was going to be good. They really pushed around Kansas, and frankly, In some ways, they should, right? The size advantage, the talent advantage that Missouri did have in this game was obvious. There's no doubt about that. But you're putting yourself in a position where if you find a way to beat South Carolina at home in 2 weeks, I can't remember who they get in between, but it's a relative layup. You get South Carolina at home. If you win that game, you're 5-0 going into the Bama game. And you're in a position where you're probably on the fast track to the CFP. If you look at that schedule, it is very manageable. You have every ability to make some big-time plays, especially when you have Bo Pribla. You have the running back duo that you have. You have Kevin Coleman on the outside. They have the pieces. There's no doubt about that. Got to fix up some things defensively. There's no doubt about that, and definitely some things that a team like South Carolina and Lenora Sellers can take advantage of. There's no doubt. But you have all the ability to make a run, to go 10-2, to get into the CFP. I think you have to go 10-2. I think that should be said here. You have to find a way to go 10-2, but I think they're in a position where they're going to do some really, really special things and be able to find their way into the CFP. But overall, this is a very, very tough team. They went 10 plays, 75 yards at the very end of, towards the end of the game, I should say, going up 31-28. It was a very, very impressive drive, and it was pretty much all on the shoulders of Bo Pribla. There's only one run for 3 yards on that drive. They made massive plays, and then Brett Norfleet eventually gets the touchdown, and then Jamal Roberts puts it on ice with a massive run down the sideline. This is a very, very good football team. They put themselves in a great position moving forward. For Kansas, it doesn't kill you by any means. You have West Virginia, Cincinnati, at UCF, and at Texas Tech coming up. You find a way to go 3-1, you're still firmly in the mix in the Big 12. If you go 4-0, you're almost very much in the mix. And I frankly think you're probably one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the Big 12 at that point. You got dominated on the line of scrimmage, and that's to be expected. Like we talked about earlier, only ran for 28 yards on 9 traditional carries. It wasn't pretty by any means. You're in a position where you got to play better. You got to turn over a couple of stones, but you have about 3 of the more advantageous Big 12 opponents with West Virginia, Cincinnati, and then at UCF you could have over the next couple of weeks to figure that out. This is going to be a good team. There's no doubt about that. For Missouri, you're firmly in the mix for a CFP moving forward. If you can put together a couple of things offensively, well, frankly, offensively you might be fine. If you can put together a couple of things defensively, you're going to be able to beat a number of teams on your schedule. You win that South Carolina game, it is off to the races for the Tigers. If you lose, you're walking a little bit of a tightrope with Alabama, Oklahoma, and a couple other tough games down the stretch. But it was an incredible weekend. A lot of big-time games. Obviously, the Michigan-Oklahoma one take a lot of the headlines and very well should. John Mateer puts on a show, probably vaults himself up to, I believe, top 3 in the Heisman conversation, if I'm not mistaken. A very good performance from him. But now we got to talk about the main events, at least in my opinion. The upsets that happened this past weekend, or almost happened this past weekend, we got to talk about them all right after this, so stick with us.